Have you wondered why the rich keep getting richer and why the poor keep getting poorer? Well, that's exactly what we're going to discuss on this week's show.
Are you interested in property investing, success or money? Well, you're in the right place. This is the Michael Yardney podcast, where each week you'll learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in 20 minutes or less. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the fourth time he's won a similar award in the last 6 years.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, particularly to all the new listeners that we keep getting every day, every week. I see it on the iTunes statistics, which ranks us amongst the top business podcasts in Australia. So thank you to the new listeners. Thank you to my existing listeners for coming back. Today I've got a special show for you, which was part of the book launch of my book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. Now let me go back a step because I want to explain that the rich are getting richer and the poor, what are they becoming? Well, we know what they're becoming. Most people don't even know who they are. Why are the rich getting richer and what can you do to make yourself one of the rich? This is one of the reasons Tom Corley and I wrote our book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, and it was launched in Australia about a year ago and in the United Kingdom, and it's done really, really well. But it was only recently launched in the United States, and that's why Mark Creedon interviewed Tom and me for our United States book launch. What I'm about to play is the audio of the book launch, where Tom Corley and I discuss our studies. I've mentored over 2,000 people in the last 10 years, some very, very successful people and some not so successful. And I've learned why the rich and successful become that way. Tom did it a very different way and for 5 years studied over 280 of his clients and worked out the habits of the rich and the habits of the poor. So we outlined that in our book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. But in particular, we're going to give you a short version of it now, as Mark Creedon interviews Tom Corley and me. I hope you get some great insights to help you work up the ladder and become richer, more successful and happier in life.
You know, there's lots of books out there that talk about how to get rich, talk about how to maintain your wealth and increase your wealth. The thing I loved about this book is that it really debunks a lot of the myths that you read in lots of other books. And I'm really looking forward today. I'm speaking to both of the authors, Michael Yardney and Tom Corley, both of whom have enormous experience. Michael is considered one of the leading mentors to business people, entrepreneurs and property investors in Australia. And of course, Tom is one of the world leaders in what habits you need to create in order to develop your wealth and become truly wealthy in life. So I'd like to welcome both of the guys. Welcome, Michael. Welcome, Tom.
Hello. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Gents, I'm really looking forward to finding out from you two things, really. Why is this book different? And what are some of the things that people really need to do in order to develop rich habits for life? Michael, if I could start with you, why do you think it is, Michael, that most people never really get out of the rat race? They never really develop wealth, even if they're in fact earning a good living?
That's a good question, Mark, because we're living in the best time in history and most of our viewers are going to be in some very affluent countries. But the reason they don't get out of the rat race is because of their money habits, the way they think about money and the way they act about money. And Mark, it's not their fault because we were taught these habits as a child. We weren't born knowing how to do money. And our mentors, our teachers in general, were our parents who had the best intentions, but were often not rich themselves. So they instilled in us habits. Those habits were taken in when we were a sponge, when we were young, by things we heard, by things we saw, by things we experienced. And today as adults, they're still there ingrained. Every morning we wake up and 90% of what we do is unconscious, subconscious. It's what we did yesterday. And it's crazy to think you're going to get a different result tomorrow by doing the same thing you did yesterday, Mark.
Yeah, definition of insanity, Michael, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've honed in on a couple of things, and one thing I'd really like to tap into with you, Tom, is the concept of habits, because first of all, in terms of wealth, Tom, you've had that experience, from when you were very young. I think it was 9 years old. Your family went from being quite wealthy to being very poor virtually overnight as a result of a catastrophic event in your family's business. But you've also spent a very long period of time really studying the habits of people and what it is that people do that set them apart from others who actually don't get out of the rat race. Can we tap into the habits for a minute? And Tom, I'm wondering if you could just share with me, why do we have habits, and what is it about habits that actually make a difference in our life and in our wealth creation?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's a good question, and the answer is really simple. There's two answers to that. There's two reasons. One is habits allow the brain to work less. The brain is always seeking to do less work. So habits, it fits the bill. It allows the brain to be more efficient and more effective. And why? Why is this important? Because there's a limited amount of brain fuel. In fact, the brain can't store fuel like other parts of the body. So it has to call upon other parts of the body to send it the fuel it needs. So habits allow the brain to work less, and habits also allow the brain to conserve brain fuel because it's a precious commodity for the brain. So habits are a physiological necessity.
So, Tom, it sounds to me that we're going to have habits, and perhaps this is sort of leading into the topic of the book or the title of the book. We're going to have habits anyway, and it's just a question of whether they're positive habits or negative habits, good habits or bad habits, and in this case, rich habits or poor habits. Where do you think most of those good habits, as opposed to the bad habits, actually come from?
Well, fortunately, Mark, we have a lot of information on that in the form of studies. So there was this individual, Dr. Pressman. He's a researcher from Brown University. He did an extensive longitudinal study, which is a lifelong study on 50,000 individuals. And what he found from the time that they were young until they were adults was that they picked up most of their lifelong habits by the age of 9. So just think about that. What are you doing from 0 to 9? Well, for the most part, you're spending time with your parents. So we're picking up most of our adult habits by the age of 9 from our parents. And if our parents are great success mentors and teach us the right habits, the right success habits, the right rich habits, and tell us to avoid, these specific poor habits, we're going to have a really successful life. Unfortunately, that's not happening. In fact, 95% of the people struggle in life. It's the 5% that are actually fortunate enough to be able to retire and not have to worry financially.
So I've just said to you gentlemen before that I've given a copy of that book to my son to read. But Tom, what you're saying, in fact, I perhaps should be giving a copy of the book to my grandson to read, or at least giving him, obviously he can't read yet, but giving him some of the habits out of that book. Michael, can I come back to you for a minute? And this is a topic that we've discussed about in the past, about the rich getting richer. And, is it true? Do you think, is it really true that the rich keep getting richer? And if it is true, why do you think that is?
A couple of reasons, Mark. Firstly, it is because of what they see at home, what they hear at home. Don't you think the conversation around the very wealthy people's kitchen table when they were growing up was very different from the conversation around your and my kitchen table? So those habits start early in life. It also has to do with the people that they hang around, the people that they associate with, the people that they learn from. The rich we've all got rich habits and poor habits. We all have a number of habits that are empowering and some that are disempowering. So in life, we're all driving around with one foot on the accelerator and one on the brake. We slow ourselves down a bit. The aim is to get rid of some of those disempowering habits. But the rich are getting richer because of the way they think, the way they act, and also the information they know. They're financially fluent, they invest, they buy assets, they run businesses, and the tax system in Western countries in general favours them. The government gives tax breaks, what some people like to call tax loopholes, to people who are entrepreneurs and run businesses. Mark?
Fantastic. Tom, you made the comment before that the most important years, the formative years, are, say, up to 9 years of age. Obviously, though, I think the important message is to know that it's not too late. If people are to read your book, tell me, how long do you think before sort of rich habits, creating new rich habits, are actually going to have a positive impact on your life once you've read that book?
Yeah, that's a good point that you raised there, that habits are malleable. You can change them. It takes time, but what I found in my research is because habits are forged by the brain, you have to go after the brain. And I devised the rich habits as keystone habits, which allow these habits to sort of take root inside the brain. And that takes about 30 days for those synapses to start to form. I think the most important thing that happens, though, at least the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of my readers, is that their mindset shifts within those 30 days from negative to positive, and they become hopeful. And this is important because now you're tapping into your emotions, right? So anytime your emotions get involved with anything, it really spurs incredible growth and change. So these keystone habits, these rich habits, poor habits that Michael and I wrote about in Rich Habits, Poor Habits, they're intended really to start the ball rolling, the snowball effect within 30 days.
So, Tom, this isn't just writing, though, is it? Because you've actually spent a number of years delving quite deep into this study and understanding a whole range of, I think, something up to 300 habits that people have that actually affect their degree of wealth or not. Yeah,
and the interesting thing that I found, in fact, I was talking to somebody about this today on the radio in New York City. You only need 1 or 2 habits to completely transform your life. I actually only follow 3 habits, 3 of the rich habits. And like you mentioned, there's over 330 of them. So you only need a couple of these habits to really transform your life. It's not going to happen overnight, but it does happen, and you see it incrementally. So yeah, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's you just need a couple of these habits and away you go.
Great point. Michael, can I come back to you on that point then, please? If you currently identify yourself as poor, what's something you could do right away that would start to turn that around?
I guess the first thing is to recognise what your situation is and why it's there. So it's no good blaming people. Unfortunately, the poor tend to blame the system, the government, the education system. So the first thing is to recognise your position and recognise why you're there. The next thing is then to recognise that your actions are the result of the way you're thinking. So you're going to have to change your way of thinking. And a really good way to start, and it is a good plug from our book, is to buy Rich Habits, Poor Habits, because it's going to help you recognize where you are in life today, why you are there, and what you can do about it. The next thing then is to remove some of the unproductive, the poor habits, one at a time. And as Tom said, not all of them. You can't just find 1 or 2 that are holding you back and replace them. So you've got to remove and then replace them with some good habits. Another great way of doing it, Mark, is to actually hang around other people that you want to be like. So if one of the habits you want to do is to exercise more, and that is one of the rich habits, and to be fair, it's not one of my good rich habits. As with Tom, I have some rich habits, and I also have some that are not as empowering. But if you want to become fit, if you want to start exercising, you'll hang around with other bike riders. You'll hang around with other people who are eating well, who are eating healthily. If you want to get involved in business, you're going to network with other people. If you want to get involved in real estate investing, you'll read the right sort of books and hang around the right people. So change your social group, change your influence group. And the other lesson I'd say is you can speed things up by getting a coach, by getting a mentor, and then standing on his shoulders and learning from his mistakes. You can see much further standing on his shoulders than you can trying to do it yourself, Mark.
Great point, great point. So, Tom, you've come up with 300 odd habits. You've just said before that you really only follow 3. Michael's given us a couple of steps that we could take almost instantly. This might be like asking somebody after they've been on a world trip, what was your favourite part? But Tom, if you could pick one, the number one most important rich habit, what would it be for you?
Well, the number one most important rich habit will be the one that has the most impact on your life, and that's the dream setting one, Mark. Dream setting is really a process that you go through. You develop a script of or a blueprint of your future ideal life, and inside that blueprint are all these dreams. These dreams represent they're like rungs on a ladder, and as you realize each dream, you climb higher and higher up the ladder. And when you get to the top, you're living your ideal, perfect life. That blueprint is so important because when I talk to all of these millionaires, the one thing they always seem to have is clarity of vision. They knew exactly where they were going. They were so crystal clear on what they wanted in life. So this rich habit, this dream setting rich habit, really answers the question, what do you want? And once you know the answer to that, then you can start pursuing your dream, your main purpose, all the goals behind that. And it's a powerful, powerful rich habit.
Mark, if I could explain what's happening inside you is you've got this reticular activating system that filters out all the noise and helps you focus. So if you have a dream, if you focus, then you're going to achieve it. It's like on the way to work today, you may not have seen how many white Toyotas there were on the road, but if you suddenly were about to buy a white Toyota, you'd see white Toyotas everywhere. What you look for, what your mind is concentrating on, your reticular activating system is your own GPS to find it. So that's, I think, why Tom's suggestion of having a focus, having a dream is a great starting point in getting yourself back on the right road.
And it's one of the things I really love about the book is that it's not just theory, it's really quite practical. So it talks about in terms of those very practical steps that you can implement, the things that you can actually do, and you can start. There's a process for doing it. I've said that I've lent the book to my son. Perhaps I should start reading it to my grandson before bed. But it really is a great book in terms of just practical step-by-step processes that you can follow. Michael, could I wrap up, please, in talking about the book? So I've read the book. I love the book. I think it has great benefits, and for all the reasons I've just said. Obviously, if you look at Amazon, there's lots of rich habits or get-rich books, if you like. What do you think sets this book apart from those that are out in the marketplace?
Well, it's not just theory. It has come from two authors who are actually living it, because there's two groups of educators out there, people who are actually theoretical and people who are practical. But we've actually combined our thoughts and come from two directions. Tom has spent 3 years studying hundreds of rich and poor people and analysing it, being a CPA. I've come from over a decade of mentoring over 2,000 successful and some not so successful business people, entrepreneurs and investors. So it's from not just my own lessons, from real world lessons of other people. And I think similarly, Tom has tabulated that.
So it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to tap into all of that knowledge, not just the knowledge from you two gentlemen, but the knowledge that you've been able to gain through, Tom, through your research, through your experience, and Michael, through your extensive research in working with people as well. It's a fantastic book. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for today. And can I encourage people, please, hop onto Amazon and purchase the book, or, of course, go to richhabitspoorhabits.com, where you'll be able to secure your very own copy and enjoy the book. Start changing your habits today.
Thanks for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed Tom and myself and some of the insights you got from our book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. If you haven't already got your own copy, go to richhabitspoorhabits.com and you can get the hard copy, the old-fashioned book, or, of course, a Kindle version. Now, if you've enjoyed this show, why don't you go back through the archives and listen to some of our old episodes? By the way, a quick way of doing it is listening at 1.5 times speed. I talk a little bit fast, but you're going to get the message and you're going to go through those great archives on the Michael Yardney podcast or on iTunes or Stitcher, and you'll get all the information that I've been sharing since I started this show a few months ago. I look forward to catching up with you next week when, again, I'm going to share some great insights.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth through strategic property advice. If you got value from listening to this podcast, please leave us a review and we'll read it out on a future show. Just go to michaelyardneypodcast.com/review and it will take you over to iTunes, where you can enter a review and let us know what you think. We'd really appreciate it. If you don't already subscribe on iTunes or on your Android phone, you'll find us there as Michael Yardney Podcast. If you'd like to gain instant access to the show notes or a transcript of the show, head across to michaelyardneypodcast.com. Watch out for our show next week. You'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success and money in around 20 minutes.